The words hit me before the meaning did. Melissus, I think it's best if you leave. My father's voice carried across the dining room with the same cold precision he used in closing arguments. The crystal chandelier above seemed to dim, or maybe that was just my vision narrowing. I felt my fingers tighten around the stem of my wine glass until the fragile bowl threatened to crack. The chatter around the table died instantly. Forks froze midair. My sister Lauren's perfectly painted smile faltered. My brother Bryce suddenly found his plate fascinating. Every eye in that room turned toward me. Some confused, most knowing they'd been waiting for this. My father stood at the head of the table, hand still raised with his toast incomplete, looking at me like I was a motion to dismiss that had just been granted. The formal invitation, the demanded attendance, the placement card at the far end, near Aunt Marlena, who thought Jonah was my driver. It had all been orchestrated for this exact moment. Public execution disguised as a family celebration. My name is Melissus. I'm 34 and a publishing director. This is the story of how I stopped begging for a seat at a table that was never meant for me. I stood because what else could I do? My napkin slipped from my lap to the floor, but I didn't bend to pick it up. My hands had gone numb, my throat tight, but I wasn't crying. Not yet. I'd learned long ago how to swallow shame in front of the Harper family. It was practically a survival skill. Then, Jonah's chair scraped against the hardwood floor. My husband stood beside me, and there was something in his posture I'd rarely seen. A coiled tension that made every person in that room suddenly sit straighter. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking directly at my father with the kind of steady gaze that made corporate investors uncomfortable. I'd like to make a toast, Jonah said quietly. My father's jaw tightened. This isn't your place. That's debatable, Jonah replied, raising his glass. But tonight, I'm the only one acting like family. The room held its breath. I felt something shift inside me. Not just relief, but something sharper. Anger. Clear, focused, overdue anger. Because this moment didn't start tonight. It started 34 years ago when I was born the wrong kind of Harper. The kind who loved stories more than stock portfolios. My father, Gerald Harper, was a litigation partner who built his career on destroying arguments. At home, he applied the same ruthless standards. Love wasn't given. It was earned through achievement that met his exact specifications. My siblings learned to perform. I learned to disappear. Bryce, the eldest, became everything Dad wanted. Lauren went into cardiothoracic surgery because of course she did. Their successes were celebrated with champagne and speeches. Mine were tolerated. I was 8 when I won my first writing contest. I handed Dad the certificate with trembling hands, desperate for just a flicker of pride. He glanced at it and said, "Writing doesn't pay the bills." That was it. Just a reminder that I'd chosen wrong, was wrong, would always be wrong in his eyes. When I switched my major from business to English Lit, he cut off my college funding entirely. If you're going to chase dreams, do it on your own dime. I worked 2 jobs, took out loans, graduated with honors. It changed nothing. I spent my 20s trying to earn what should have been given freely. I shrank myself to fit into conversations about court cases and medical procedures. I laughed at jokes that weren't funny. I showed up to gatherings where I was treated like a ghost. Then I met Jonah in a bookstore. He actually listened. Not to judge, but because he was genuinely interested. Jonah didn't come from money or prestige. His father was an electrician, his mother a teacher. They welcomed me like I'd always belonged. When we got married, my father said he was busy that weekend. So when the ivory invitation for this family celebration arrived 3 weeks ago, I knew I should throw it away. but some pathetic part of me still hoped. Maybe Dad was softening. Maybe he'd finally see me. Now, here we were. After being ignored all night, after Aunt Marlena asked if Jonah was my driver, my father raised a glass to my siblings, then looked at me. I think it's best if you leave now. Jonah was still standing, glass raised. My father's face had gone rigid. To the woman you just tried to dismiss, Jonah said, his voice cutting through the silence. My wife Melissa's. He turned back to Dad. You say tonight is for people who matter. Let me tell you who matters. Melissa's built her life without a safety net. After you cut her off, she worked 2 jobs. She launched her own imprint and gave dozens of authors their first shot. Veterans, immigrants, teenagers who'd never seen themselves in a book before. Dad's knuckles went white on his wineglass. But none of that matters to you, Jonah continued, because you don't measure success in impact. You measure it in status and control. And when Melissa's refused to conform, you erased her publicly on purpose. He looked around the table. To the rest of you, if this feels awkward, it should. You watched a father humiliate his daughter, and you said nothing. Then Jonah looked at me, his expression softening. Melissa's. I see you. I've always seen you. Something broke open in my chest. Recognition. Jonah turned back to Dad. You told her to leave. Fine. We'll both leave. But don't ever mistake your silence for authority again. You do not get to dictate her worth. He took my hand, steady and warm. And that's when I realized I wasn't leaving in shame. I was walking away from people who would never see me. But I wasn't done. I pulled my hand gently from Jonah's and faced my father. My voice surprised me with its steadiness. You know what's funny, Dad? I spent 34 years thinking something was wrong with me. But tonight made me realize you can't love what you don't respect. And you've never respected anything that didn't look exactly like you. Bryce, I said, turning to my brother. How many times did you use my marketing analysis for your pitches? You never credited me. His face flushed red. Lauren, I continued. Remember when you told Mom's hospice nurse I was too emotional to make medical decisions? You had me removed from her care team in her final weeks. She was speechless. I looked back at my father. You taught them that cruelty is fine as long as it's polite. But I'm done being your lesson in what happens to Harper children who don't perform. And Dad, since you're so concerned about legacies, I've been documenting everything. Every dismissal, every exclusion. I'm writing a memoir. My father's face finally changed. Fear. It's not about revenge, I said quietly. It's about truth. My publisher thinks it'll resonate. You'll both be in it, I told my siblings. Every stolen credit, every cruel comment. I'm not changing your names. The room was silent. You wanted me to leave, I said to my father. Consider it permanent, but I'm not doing it quietly. I'm doing it publicly, with receipts. I walked toward the door with Jonah. At the threshold, my father's voice cracked. If you write that book, you're cut off permanently from everything. I didn't turn around. Your money was never what I needed. Your love was, and that expired a long time ago. The door closed behind us with a soft click. Outside, the night air felt impossibly clean. In the car, I started shaking. Not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally speaking my truth. Then I laughed. A real, genuine laugh. I'm writing that book. I'm actually doing it. The next morning, I woke to 17 texts. Bryce said, that was unnecessary. Lauren said, you've always made everything about you. I blocked them all. But one message mattered. From my editor Coffee Monday. Want to hear your pitch for that memoir? The book took 8 months to write. I poured everything into it. 3 weeks before publication, my father's attorney sent a cease and desist letter. My lawyer laughed. Truth is an absolute defense. The book launched on a Tuesday. By Friday, it hit 3 bestseller lists. Not because it was salacious, but because it was honest. Thousands of people left reviews saying, "This is my family, too. Thank you for saying what I couldn't." My father never contacted me, but Lauren emailed, "You've embarrassed us all. I hope you're happy." I wrote back, "I'm not happy, but I'm free." There's a difference. I later heard my father had resigned from 2 nonprofit boards. Karma isn't revenge. It's just the truth catching up. 1 year after that dinner, I stood in the nursery of our new home, rocking my daughter, Irish June Harper. Iris for resilience, June for new beginnings. Our living room was full of chosen family, people who loved without requiring performance. Later, I found a letter by the door, my father's handwriting. I held it, then placed it unopened in a drawer. I didn't need his words anymore. That night, watching my daughter sleep, I leaned close and whispered the words I wished someone had said to me. "You are already enough. You don't have to earn my love. It's yours completely, unconditionally, forever." As I said it to her, I realized I was finally saying it to myself too. To the little girl who loved stories, to the young woman who walked out of that dining room and found her voice, and to every person who ever wondered if they were the problem. Let me tell you what I learned. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't win their approval. It's stop needing it. The people who matter will see you, and the ones who don't, they're just characters in your origin story. The obstacle that taught you how strong you really were. That's not revenge. That's justice. And the best revenge is making them irrelevant while you build something beautiful they can't touch. Thanks for listening. If this story resonated with you, consider subscribing for more. I never expected to be humiliated at my own sister's engagement party. The lights were warm, the smiles were rehearsed, and her voice carried easily when she laughed and said, "I was just admin at a courthouse." People chuckled. My chest burned, but I stayed quiet like I always did. Then her fiancé turned toward me, studying my face like he'd seen it somewhere before. "So, what do you actually do?" he asked. I didn't explain. I didn't defend myself. I said one word, and what happened next wasn't loud or dramatic, but it changed how my family looked at me forever. My name is Verity, and for as long as I can remember, my family has loved neat labels. The kind you can say quickly at dinner, the kind that don't invite follow-up questions. My sister Evelyn was always the impressive one, ambitious, charismatic, the kind of person who could walk into a room and make it orbit around her. And me, I was the quiet one, the reliable one, the one who worked at the courthouse. That phrase followed me everywhere. Thanksgiving tables, birthday dinners, casual phone calls. "So, you're still doing admin work?" they'd ask, smiling like they were being kind. I'd nod. "Yeah, still there." And the conversation would move on. What they didn't see was how carefully I'd learned to stay invisible around them. Not because I was ashamed, but because every time I tried to explain, their eyes glazed over. I learned early that my accomplishments made people uncomfortable, especially Evelyn. So I softened my words, rounded the edges, and let them believe the smaller version of me, because it kept the peace. At home, the pattern never changed. Evelyn talked. Everyone listened. My parents leaned in when she spoke about her work, her milestones, her plans. When I spoke, forks scraped plates. It wasn't cruelty. It was habit. And habits are hard to break. There was only one person who ever looked at me differently, my cousin Lily. She noticed the late nights, the way I carried myself, the way my phone buzzed at odd hours. She knew the truth even when I never said it out loud. Sometimes she'd squeeze my hand under the table, reminding me I wasn't invisible everywhere. I told myself I didn't need their validation. But that was only half true, because every time Evelyn laughed at my courthouse job, something inside me tightened. By the time her engagement party came around, I already knew how the night would go. I didn't expect respect. I didn't expect curiosity. What I did unexpect was to be cornered by a question that refused to let the lie survive another minute. The engagement party was exactly what you'd expect from Evelyn. Picture perfect and carefully designed to impress. String lights stretched across the backyard, like a stage sunset, white flowers everywhere. I arrived early because that's what I always did. Before I could even set my purse down, my mom handed me a stack of napkins. "Can you help over there?" she said, already turning away. By the time guests started arriving, I'd already refilled ice twice and wiped down a counter no one had used yet. I was used to this role. Useful, quiet, out of the way. Then Evelyn arrived. She stepped out of the car, glowing, a diamond catching the light. People gathered around her instantly. Her fiancé Daniel followed close behind, polished, calm, smiling. He shook hands, thanked people, listened more than he spoke. At first, he barely looked at me. Evelyn made sure everyone knew how successful he was. Big wins, big payments, big numbers. My parents beamed. I stood near the edge of the crowd, watching the same story I'd seen my whole life play out again. Then Evelyn noticed me. "Come here," she said, waving me over like an afterthought. "I don't think everyone's met my sister." She wrapped an arm around my shoulder and smiled wide. "This is She works at the courthouse." A few polite nods. "She's just admin," Evelyn added, laughing. "Keeps things organized. Answers, phones, you know how it is." Someone chuckled. I felt the familiar heat rise in my chest. This wasn't new. This was just louder. But Daniel didn't laugh. He was watching me now, really watching. His smile faded just slightly. His eyes searched my face like he was flipping through memories. Dinner was announced. I took a seat near the end, exactly where I was expected to be. Toasts were made. Then Evelyn raised her glass again. "Some people argue important cases," she said, nodding toward Daniel. "And some people answer phones." "Right, Verity." Her eyes dared me to react. That's when Daniel turned and looked straight at me. "Wait," he said slowly. "Verity, what exactly do you do at the courthouse?" The table went still. Every eye shifted in my direction. And suddenly, there was nowhere left to hide. For a moment, no one spoke. The question hung there, awkward and exposed. I felt every pair of eyes on me, the weight of years pressing into my shoulders. I looked down at my hands. I could hear the low hum of the outdoor lights. In that pause, 1,000 small moments rushed in. Every holiday where I'd been asked to help set up. Every dinner where my work was summarized into a single word. Every time I'd chosen silence. I remembered standing in my apartment late at night, rereading notes for another long day, knowing none of it would ever be mentioned at this table. I realized something then. I hadn't been protecting them by staying quiet. I'd been protecting the version of me they preferred, the smaller one. Across from me, Evelyn was smiling too hard, her jaw tight. My mother stared at her plate. My father reached for his glass and stopped halfway. Daniel was still watching me, not impatient, not mocking, just waiting. The old instinct told me to soften it, to keep the peace one more time. But another feeling rose up, calm and steady. Clarity. If I spoke now, the truth would land. If I stayed silent, the lie would keep living, and I would keep shrinking to make room for it. This wasn't about embarrassing my sister. It was about refusing to disappear anymore. I straightened slightly in my chair and set my glass down. The sound was small, but it cut through the quiet. My heartbeat slowed. The fear I'd carried for years loosened its grip. I looked at Daniel first, then at my parents, then finally at Evelyn, and I knew, whatever came next, there was no going back. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't smile. I said one word, Judge. It landed softly, but the effect was immediate. The air shifted. Conversations died mid-breath. Forks paused halfway to mouths. For a second, no one moved. My mother's face drained of color. My father blinked hard, his hand tightening around his glass. Evelyn laughed. It came out sharp and brittle. "Oh, my God," she said, waving a hand. "Very funny." I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes on Daniel. He hadn't laughed. His expression had changed. Not confusion, but recognition finally snapping into place. He leaned back slowly. "Judge," he repeated quietly. Then his eyes widened just a fraction. "Verity Cole," he said. "The courthouse, downtown." No one breathed. "You presided over my case last year," he went on. "The one with the corporate dispute. I stood in front of you more than once." The silence deepened. Evelyn's smile froze. "What are you talking about?" She snapped. "She works admin. She answers phones." Daniel didn't look at her. "I know what admin work looks like," he said calmly, "and I know what a judge looks like." He looked back at me. "You were fair, direct. You listened. That's why I remember." My father finally found his voice. "You're a judge?" he asked, disbelief thick in his tone. "Since when?" 3 years, I said evenly. My mother shook her head. "But you said you were assisting someone." "I was," I replied. "At the beginning, no one ever asked after that." That was when it hit them. The realization that the story they'd been repeating hadn't been corrected, not because it was true, but because it was convenient. Evelyn pushed her chair back. "This is ridiculous," she said. "You let everyone believe you were admin. Who does that?" I met her gaze. "I didn't lie. I stopped correcting you." Her face flushed. "You did this on purpose," she snapped. "You waited until my engagement party to embarrass me." I shook my head. "You embarrassed yourself. I answered a question you asked in front of everyone." She turned to Daniel, her voice rising. "You knew she was a judge and didn't tell me?" "I didn't know," he said. "I never connected Judge Cole to your sister. You never said her last name. You never let her speak." That landed harder than anything I could have said. My grandmother reached across the table and squeezed my wrist. "I always knew," she said softly. Evelyn stood up so abruptly her chair scraped against the stone. "This is my night," she said, her voice shaking now. "And you've ruined it. You always find a way to make it about you." I stayed seated. "I didn't say anything," I replied calmly, "until you mocked me. Until you reduced me to a joke. That was a choice." Her mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, she had no comeback. Daniel stood slowly. "Evelyn," he said carefully, "the way you spoke to her." She cut him off. "Don't. You're supposed to be on my side. I'm on the side of the truth," he said. "And I don't know how I missed this. How I let you talk about your own sister like that." That was the moment it broke. Evelyn looked around the table and realized the orbit had shifted. No one was laughing. No one was defending her. "This is unbelievable," she whispered. "You think you're better than me now?" I shook my head. "No. I think I finally stopped pretending to be less." She stared at me, something raw and frightened behind her anger. Then she turned and walked inside. Daniel hesitated, then looked at me. There was conflict in his eyes, but also respect. "I need to talk to her," he said quietly. I nodded. After they left, the table stayed silent. My mother finally reached for my hand. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked, her voice small. I didn't pull away, because every time I tried to be seen, I said, "You looked away." No one argued with that, and in that stillness, I felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Not triumph, but relief, like I'd finally set down a weight I'd been carrying for years. The next morning, I woke up to a strange sense of calm. Then the messages started. Missed calls, long texts, clumsy apologies. Around midday, Daniel knocked on my door. He looked tired. We sat at opposite ends of my couch. He didn't make excuses. "I can't unsee it now," he said. "The way she spoke to you, the way everyone let it happen." I nodded. "I don't know what this means for us yet," he admitted, "but I know I can't ignore it." A few days later, Evelyn showed up unannounced. No makeup, hair pulled back. "I was scared," she said finally. "Of being ordinary, of being second." I believed her. "I'm not here to compete," I told her. "I never was." She nodded slowly, like she was hearing that for the first time. Nothing was fixed overnight, but my parents started asking questions and waiting for answers. Lily smiled at me across dinner tables. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to explain myself at all. I used to think staying quiet was the same as being kind. I was wrong. Silence didn't protect anyone. It just taught people how small they could make me. The truth is, you don't owe anyone a smaller version of yourself just to keep the peace. If you've ever been there, hiding your growth so others feel comfortable, you're not alone. Share your story in the comments. And if this resonated with you, hit subscribe. You deserve to be seen. The divorce papers trembled in my hand as I watched my husband's face, not from grief or regret, but from the effort it took not to smile. "So, you'll really just leave?" James asked, eyebrows raised in mock concern, while his fingers intertwined with those of Rachel, his mistress. She sat beside him on my designer sofa, the one I'd saved for 6 months to buy. "I'm taking all my personal belongings with me," I sighed evenly, placing the papers on the coffee table between us, just so we're clear. Rachel's eyes scanned our living room, lingering on the custom lighting fixtures, the artfully arranged furniture, the hand-selected decor pieces that had transformed this dated house into something from a magazine spread. "This place is perfect," she sighed, running her hand along the velvet armrest. "It's exactly what I've always wanted. Your old clothes and whatever, take them. Honestly, they just remind me of our miserable time together." I nodded slowly, not bothering to correct his assumption. "I'll have movers here tomorrow. Just remember you agreed to no division of property." My name is Lauren. I'm 29 and an interior designer. This is the story of how I emptied more than just a house. 3 years ago, I married James, believing we were partners in every sense. He was 34, worked in construction management, and inherited his grandparents' house shortly before we met. The place was structurally sound, but hadn't been updated since the 1980s, all beige walls and scuffed laminate. James had furnished it with cast-offs from friends and discount store basics. When we married, I saw potential. With my design, expertise, and savings, I transformed that dated property into something special. Every piece was carefully selected. Mid-century modern furniture that complemented the home's bones, statement lighting that drew the eye upward, custom window treatments that framed the view perfectly. I documented every purchase, partly from professional habit, and partly because I'd learned early in our marriage that James was careless with money. That carelessness extended to our relationship. The little things accumulated, dishes left in the sink, despite our agreement to share chores. Complaints about meals I'd prepared after working 10-hour days. Dismissive comments about my obsession with how things looked. But I kept trying, believing marriage required compromise. What I couldn't compromise on was discovering his texts to Rachel 6 months ago. She was 25. A temp in his office with an Instagram feed full of aspirational home decor she couldn't afford. Their messages made it clear what had drawn her to my husband. Access to the beautiful home she assumed he had created. James has such amazing taste, she'd written to a friend. His wife just works all the time and doesn't appreciate what he's built. I saved screenshots of everything. The messages, the dinner dates, the hotel receipts, not for confrontation, but for confirmation. I needed to be certain before making my next move. When I finally contacted Rachel directly, suggesting we all meet to discuss the situation, she seemed more excited than ashamed. She arrived at our house wearing a dress that costs more than she made in a week, clearly purchased for the occasion. "I just want you to know," she said immediately, leaning forward with practiced sympathy. "I never meant to hurt you, but when two people connect the way James and I have, let's just get this over with," I interrupted, sliding the divorce papers across the table. "James and I agreed before marriage. No division of property in case of divorce." Rachel's eyes lit up. She squeezed James's hand. "See? I told you she'd be reasonable." James nodded, relief evident in his shoulders. "Karen, Ami Loren, has always been practical. It's one of her better qualities." The slip didn't surprise me. He'd been calling me by the wrong name for months now. "Let me show you around," Rachel said suddenly, standing up. "I have so many ideas for this place." I watched silently as she walked through my carefully curated rooms, trailing her fingers over surfaces, mentally replacing my presence. "These light fixtures are amazing. And this dining table, is it custom?" "It is," I said. Everything here was specifically chosen to complement the space. "Perfect," she breathed. "I wouldn't change a thing." "You won't have to," James assured her. "Lauren's just taking her clothes and personal stuff, right?" I nodded again, seeing no reason to elaborate. "The movers will be here at 9 a.m. tomorrow." That night, I stayed in the guest room, listening to them whisper and laugh in what had been my bedroom. I didn't sleep. Instead, I reviewed my inventory lists one final time, making sure nothing had been overlooked. The movers arrived precisely at 9 a.m. the next morning. 2 large trucks and 6 workers. I'd hired the best company in the city, one I often collaborated with for my design clients. "Morning, Miss Turner," the foreman said. "We've got the inventory list you sent. Comprehensive job today?" "Huh?" James and Rachel emerged from the bedroom, still in robes, looking annoyed at the commotion. "Why are there 2 trucks?" Rachel asked, frowning as workers began carefully removing the living room artwork. "How many clothes do you have?" I didn't answer, just handed the foreman my tablet with the complete inventory. The men worked efficiently, wrapping each piece of furniture in protective blankets, detaching light fixtures with care, even removing the custom window treatments. It took 20 minutes for James to realize what was happening. "What the hell?" he shouted, rushing toward the workers who were dismantling the sectional sofa. "Stop. That's my couch." I handed him a folder. Here are the receipts. Every piece of furniture, every appliance, every light fixture and piece of decor was purchased by me with my money after we married. His face drained of color as he flipped through the pages. You can't. This is. We've been using these things for years. Usage doesn't transfer ownership, I said, and we agreed. No division of property. You're taking everything. Rachel's voice rose to a near scream. Not the house, I clarified. That belongs to James. Just everything in it. By noon, the living room was empty, except for the built-in shelves. By 2:00 p.m. the kitchen contained nothing but the cabinets and countertops. By 4:00 p.m. even the curtain rods had been removed. James alternated between pleading and threatening. You'll regret this, he hissed, while the workers carefully packaged the surround sound system. I'll sue you. On what grounds? I asked quietly. We agreed in writing, no division of property. You keep what's yours. I keep what's mine. As the workers began loading the last truck, a small panel van pulled up. 2 men in coveralls approached the house. Mrs. Turner, we're here for the wallpaper removal. Rachel, who had been sitting on the floor since the dining chairs had been taken, looked up in horror. The wallpaper custom printed, I explained. Designed specifically for this house, cost nearly $8,000. My company. You can't take the walls, James shouted. Not the walls, I corrected. Just what's on them. Like you said, I'm taking all my personal belongings. I left them standing in an empty house with bare walls and exposed outlets where my designer sconces had hung. The house looked older than before I'd transformed it, all the flaws now visible without my carefully placed distractions. 2 weeks later, James called. His voice had lost the confidence that had once attracted me. Lauren, please, he began. Rachel left. She said she couldn't live like this. We need your help. We? I asked. I meant, I need your help. I was wrong about everything. Wrong about what specifically? I asked. Though I knew exactly what he meant. He sighed. About us. About Rachel. About the house. I didn't realize how much work you'd put into making it beautiful. Rachel kept complaining. Nothing was good enough. The second-hand furniture I bought looks terrible. She said she didn't sign up to live in a dorm room. That sounds difficult, I said, feeling nothing. Would you consider coming back or at least helping me make this place livable again? I thought about the furniture now arranged in my new apartment. I'd already sold most of it. Too many memories. The proceeds had funded a complete renovation of my new space, with pieces that better reflected who I was now. I'm afraid that's not possible, I said. But I wish you luck with your decorating. I hung up before he could respond, then blocked his number. The divorce had been finalized a week earlier, ending our marriage officially. Some spaces, once emptied, should stay that way. He slid the divorce papers across the conference table with the confidence of a man who believed the outcome had already been decided. Sign it now, or I'll destroy you in court, my husband Derek said calmly. You have nothing. No job. No money. No proof. No chance. His lawyer sat beside him in a tailored suit, nodding as if this were already a formality. 2 men, certain of their power, waiting for me to fold. I didn't react. I didn't argue. I didn't panic. That calm confused Derek. It irritated him. When I said I was waiting for my attorney, he laughed. She's not coming. I made sure of it. Your little legal aid lawyer. Got a call this morning. Conflict of interest. You're alone now. Sign the papers, and maybe I'll let you see the kids on weekends. Then the door opened. The woman who walked in wasn't the lawyer Derek expected. She was tall, composed, impeccably dressed, carrying a leather briefcase that radiated authority. "Apologies for the delay," she said coolly. Traffic from the federal courthouse was dreadful. She extended her hand not to Derek, but to his lawyer, Patricia Holloway. "I'll be representing Mrs. Patterson." The room shifted instantly. Recognition dawned on Derek's lawyer's face. Patricia Holloway of Morrison and Associates, one of the most formidable family law attorneys in the state. Derek's certainty cracked. He hadn't always been cruel. Or maybe he had been, and I was too young to see it. We married when I was 22. He was successful, confident, stable, everything I thought would save me from my own chaotic upbringing. In the beginning, life felt secure. I supported his commercial real estate business. I stayed home with our children, Marcus and Sophia. Then control crept in quietly. "I'll handle the finances. You don't need your own credit card. Why do you want to work when I provide everything? Your friends aren't good for you by year 8. I had no income, no credit, no independence. By year 12, the verbal abuse was constant, the isolation complete, and the threats terrifying. No judge gives custody to an unemployed woman, he'd say. You'd be homeless without me. Leaving took 2 years, not because I was weak, but because I was careful. I documented everything, recorded conversations where he screamed, belittled, threatened me, photographed financial records I wasn't meant to see, discovered hidden accounts, shell companies, offshore money. I built a small emergency fund in secret, and through a nonprofit that supports abuse survivors. I found Patricia. "He thinks he's invincible," she told me in our first meeting. "Men like him always do. That's where they fail." Derek thought this meeting was an ambush. He believed canceling my lawyer left me defenseless. He was wrong. Patricia wasted no time. "My client was pressured into signing documents without counsel," she said. "That's coercion. And she's been recording since she entered the room." Derek turned red. "That's illegal." "One-party consent state," Patricia replied calmly. "Perfectly legal. The papers he wanted me to sign would have erased me. Full custody to him. Supervised visits for me. No spousal support after 12 years of marriage. Almost none of the marital assets. She's unstable," Derek said easily. "Unfit?" Patricia looked at him. "Evidence." She then placed a thick folder on the table. 3 years of abuse recordings. Financial documents showing $2.3 million hidden offshore. LLCs concealing marital property. Proof of a 4-year affair with his business partner. The silence was suffocating. The next 3 hours dismantled everything Derek thought was untouchable. When his lawyer realized Derek had lied to him, the power dynamic collapsed. Derek argued behind glass walls during a recess, red-faced and frantic. There, recalculating. Patricia whispered to me, "He came in expecting to crush you." The revised offer came back humbled. Primary custody, to me. Substantial spousal support. Full disclosure and division of hidden assets. Ironclad child support. A confidentiality agreement. His reputation protected. At a price I accepted. 3 weeks later, it was finalized. I walked away with my children, financial security, and a future Derek swore I'd never have. The money mattered, but freedom mattered more. Derek tried to fight it later. He lost. Judges saw the documentation. Courts enforced the payments. His control was gone. Years passed. My son once told me, "Dad says you tricked him." I smiled gently. I think he underestimated me. I went back to school, built a career helping women escape situations like mine. Patricia became a friend and an ally. Derek remarried twice. The same patterns followed him. Control, hidden money, manipulation. Some people never change when consequences arrive too late. But he never destroyed me. He never took my children. And he never saw this coming. He said I had nothing. No proof. No chance. What he didn't know was that while he was controlling me, I was preparing. He expected a victim. He got an opponent, and the moment that door opened, everything he threatened to take became everything he lost. My marriage to David felt like something out of a fairy tale. At least for the first 5 years, we were the picture-perfect couple. Always laughing, always supporting each other. But slowly, things started to change. David became distant, working late more often, and our conversations, once filled with shared dreams, became stilted and superficial. I tried to ignore the growing unease in my heart, telling myself it was just a rough patch, that all marriages go through this. But the late nights became more frequent, the excuses flimsier, and the emotional gap between us widened into a chasm. The turning point came on a Tuesday evening. David had called to say he was stuck in a last-minute, urgent meeting and wouldn't be home for dinner. I felt that familiar pang of disappointment, but decided to make the best of it. I ordered my favorite takeout and settled in to watch a movie. Around 9 p.m., my phone buzzed with a notification from our shared cloud account. It was a photo upload. I clicked on it, expecting maybe a picture from a work event. My blood ran cold. It was David, all right. But he wasn't in a meeting. He was at a fancy restaurant, smiling, with his arm draped around someone. My initial shock turned to confusion. It wasn't a woman. It was a man, a handsome, well-dressed man, and they looked incredibly comfortable together, intimate even. My mind raced. Was this a business partner, a friend I didn't know about? But the way they looked at each other, the casual intimacy of the gesture, it screamed something more. I scrolled through the cloud history and found more photos hidden in a folder I'd never noticed before. Pictures of them on weekend trips I thought David took for work conferences. Pictures of them at a beach, looking like a couple on vacation. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. My husband, the man I had built my life with, was having an affair. And it was with another man. The initial shake gave way to a tidal wave of betrayal and hurt. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat on the couch, staring at the screen, the happy images mocking me. How could he do this? How could he lie to me for so long? The next morning, when David came home, I confronted him. I showed him the photos. He couldn't deny it. The look on his face was a mixture of guilt and, strangely, relief. He confessed everything. His lover's name was Alex, and they had been seeing each other for over a year. He said he was confused, that he still loved me, but he also had feelings for Alex. His words were like knives. I told him I needed space, that he had to leave. He packed a bag and went to a hotel, leaving me alone in our once happy home, now filled with the ghosts of his lies. 4 days, I was a wreck. I cried. I screamed. I barely ate. But amidst the grief, a new feeling started to take root. Anger. And with that anger came a steely resolve. I was not going to be a victim in this story. I had given David the best years of my life. I had supported his career, and I had helped build our assets. I deserved a fair settlement in the divorce, and I was going to make sure I got it. I knew David would try to hide his assets and downplay his infidelity to get a better deal. I needed irrefutable proof. I thought about the man in the photos. Alex. An idea, crazy at first, started to form in my mind. What if he didn't know David was married? What if he was being lied to as well? I did some digging online, using the information from the photo locations and a bit of social media sleuthing. It wasn't hard to find him. Alex was a graphic designer with a public professional profile. Taking a deep breath, I sent him a message. I kept it simple and direct. Hi Alex, my name is Sarah. I'm David's wife. I think we need to talk. My heart pounded as I waited for a response. It came within an hour. His what was all it said. We arranged to meet at a quiet coffee shop the next day. When I saw him, my anger momentarily softened. He looked just as devastated as I felt. He sat down, his eyes filled with a mixture of confusion and hurt. He told me he was divorced, Alex said, his voice trembling slightly. He said it was amicable and that his ex-wife had moved out of state. He showed me fake divorce papers. I can't believe I was so stupid. My heart went out to him. David hadn't just betrayed me. He had built an entire world of lies, trapping both of us in it. He had played us both for fools. As we talked, sharing our respective stories of David's deceit, a strange sense of camaraderie formed between us. We were two people from different worlds, brought together by the same man's betrayal. It was Alex who first suggested it. He's not going to get away with this, he said, his voice firm. We should work together. We can gather all the evidence we need to make sure you get everything you deserve, and to make sure he can't do this to anyone else. It was a bold idea, but it felt right. We were no longer victims. We were a team, and so began our unlikely alliance. Alex had a wealth of information. He had text messages, emails, and even receipts from their trips together, all of which documented the affair and David's lies. We became co-conspirators, united by a common goal. We meticulously organized everything. Alex forwarded me years' worth of emails where David complained about his fictional ex-wife and made promises of a future together. He had saved screenshots of text conversations where David detailed his financial assets, bragging about investments I knew nothing about. It turned out David had been siphoning money from our joint accounts into a secret one, planning for his new life with Alex while leaving me with the scraps. Our mission felt like something out of a spy movie. One day, Alex remembered David mentioning a safety deposit box where he kept important documents. Alex knew the bank, but not the box number. Posing as David's personal assistant, I called the bank, claiming David had lost the key and needed to arrange for a locksmith. With some social engineering and a very convincing story about an urgent business deal, I managed to get the box number and the access protocols. It was a long shot, but it worked. Armed with this information, my lawyer was able to file a subpoena to have the box opened. Inside, we found it all. Documents for offshore accounts, deeds to properties I never knew existed, and evidence of significant hidden assets. It was the smoking gun we needed. David had been planning to leave me with virtually nothing. When my lawyer presented David and his legal team with our mountain of evidence, the color drained from his face. The text messages, the emails, the financial records, the proof of the hidden assets. It was an open and shut case. His lawyer, who had initially been aggressive and dismissive, immediately changed his tune. There was no trial. David knew he was cornered. He agreed to a settlement that was far more generous than what I would have received otherwise. I got the house, a significant portion of his hidden assets, and enough financial security to start my life over. The day the divorce was finalized, I felt a profound sense of relief. It wasn't just about the money. It was about justice. It was about taking back my power. After everything was settled, I met with Alex one last time. We sat in that same coffee shop, but this time the atmosphere was different. There was no sadness, only a quiet sense of victory and closure. I couldn't have done it without you, I told him, and I meant it. He just smiled. We did it together, he replied. I'm sorry for the part I played, even unknowingly. I assured him that the blame lay solely with David. We wished each other well, two strangers who had become unlikely allies, and then we went our separate ways. The experience changed me. It taught me about my own strength and resilience. I learned that even in the darkest moments of betrayal, you can find unexpected allies and the power to fight for yourself. I started a new chapter, not as a victim of a broken marriage, but as the architect of my own future. And while the scars of David's deceit will always be there, they serve as a reminder that I survived. I fought back, and I won. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've been through something similar, know that you're not alone, and you have the strength to get through it. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories. The crystal glass clinked against the spoon, silencing the room. My father, Richard, lifted his scotch and smiled like a king, surveying his kingdom. To my son, Caleb, he announced proudly, the sole heir to the entire $80 million Lake Tahoe estate. 50 people erupted into applause. Caleb soaked it in, grinning, nodding, already acting like the crown was welded to his skull. I stood in the shadow of a bookshelf, holding a single manila envelope against my chest. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I smiled. Then I locked eyes with Marcus, the family attorney, and said 4 words that froze the room. You really don't know, do you? My father's face darkened. Know what? Before I answer that, you need to understand who I am to this family. My name is Valerie. I'm 29 years old, and for the last decade, I haven't been treated like a daughter or a sister. I've been infrastructure. For 10 years, I ran the Lake Tahoe estate, not supervised ran it. I negotiated zoning permits with city councils. I fought contractors who tried to inflate costs because they saw a wealthy family name. I woke up at 3 in the morning when pipes burst, standing ankle deep in freezing water while my father slept peacefully upstairs. And Caleb spent those same 10 years on business trips. Vegas, Aspen, CABO, recovery vacations from the stress of being the heir. He couldn't read a lease agreement, but every time a project finished early and under budget because of me, my father would clap him on the back and say, "Good work, son. You're building a legacy." They thought I was desperate for approval. They thought I was obedient. What they didn't realize was that while I was keeping their empire alive, I was also learning where everybody was buried. The breaking point came 7 days ago. I walked into my father's study with financial reports showing our most profitable quarter ever entirely due to a restructuring plan I designed. I asked for 10% equity, not control, not inheritance, recognition. My father laughed. "Equity," he said. "Valerie, you don't get equity. You get a roof over your head." "I do the work," I said. "Caleb does nothing." That's when his mask slipped. "You earned nothing," he snapped. "I fed you, I clothed you. You're not a partner, you're my investment. You don't get dividends. You're equipment." That was the moment my soul went cold. I wasn't his daughter. I was an appliance that had started making noise. So I stopped asking to be valued and started preparing to leave. For 3 years, I watched Caleb incinerate money, gambling debts, a crypto scam he learned about at a blackjack table, a hit-and-run settlement in Reno. Every time, my father told me to move numbers around. I did. And I documented everything, every forged signature, every illegal asset transfer, every felony. They laughed at my spreadsheets. They didn't realize those spreadsheets were graves. Back in the living room, the applause faded. Caleb strutted over to me, scotch in hand. "Don't look so sour, Val," he whispered. "Someone has to lose." "You haven't won anything," I said. He smirked. "I cleared out the guest cottage this morning, turning it into a poker lounge. My stomach dropped. Mrs. Higgins lives there." He shrugged. "She's 8. I sent her to a motel. Dead weight. That was it." This wasn't about money anymore. This was about cruelty. He leaned closer. "You've got a month to move out. Tonight, grab a broom and clean the spilled champagne." He walked away laughing. I opened the envelope. I walked to the center of the room. "Before we continue," I sighed calmly, "there's an administrative matter about the ownership of the Lake Tahoe estate." Caleb rolled his eyes. "Dad already announced it. I own everything." "No," I said, laying documents on the table. "You don't. The deeds, every property. Recorded 3 years ago." Marcus picked one up, his face drained of color. "Richard, these are valid. Grandma didn't trust you," I said. "She put everything into a trust managed solely by me." Silence crushed the room. "I've been the landlord for 3 years," I continued, "and I've been paying off Caleb's debts quietly." I slapped an eviction notice against Caleb's chest. "For you," my father screamed. "Why did you wait?" "Because I knew you," I said. "I waited until you claimed ownership publicly so you'd have nowhere to hide." Caleb laughed suddenly and pulled out a document. "Power of attorney. Signed 2 days before Grandma died." Marcus examined it. Then I handed him hospital records. She was sedated, intubated, physically restrained. Marcus dropped the paper. "This is felony fraud." Caleb panicked. He confessed $500,000 in private debts. Collateral tied to the house. "They're coming at 5, he gasped. I checked my watch. 4:45. My father grabbed me. "You have to fix this," I pulled away. "I'm done paying for your sins." I walked out. Black SUVs pulled into the driveway behind me. I didn't call my family. I called the police. The house was seized. Caleb went to prison. Richard lost everything. Now I live in a small apartment with a lease in my name. The wine tastes like freedom. If you've ever had to choose between saving your family and saving yourself, you're not alone.